this gets more and more refined. But once you're done with 120 grit, don't use 150, okay? Use the finish sander with 150 grit and 180 grit, okay? This is undesirable. You don't want to have this and put a really high gloss finish on it, because this will show up all day, all right? And as you'll find out, I don't really like that, because it just looks like that you didn't pay attention to what you're doing. It's not a very desirable product at the end, and you don't want whoever the end user is to see that, and it's a representation of your craftsmanship. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that, so that way you don't make that mistake, okay? But this is part of the process of sanding a surface to get it ready for finish or stain, right? Okay. So let me just show you the proper way again, how to wrap this cord and make my little loops. And then when I have about that much left, I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this around. That way it'll hold its shape when I'm doing this. Okay? Video. So, here's the other piece of equipment. This is a random orbit sander also, but it just happens to be a barrel grip. And again, this cord is a little bit long, so what we're going to do is take this off. I'm going to take it wrapped around my shoulder. I'll plug this in because I'm ready to sand. Except, well, I'm sorry, I don't have this clamped down yet. Remember, whenever we have a piece of equipment, we want to make sure we have it clamped down or on a rubber mat. My mistake. I'm going to make sure I have that. So I have plug this in and make sure this is off before I plug it in, of course, right? So I place this over my shoulder. Now I want to move in an 8 feet per minute downstroke side. So I'll turn this on. The sander is on the surface, okay? I don't want to try landing it. It's not been successful for students, okay? So I want to go ahead, start at one end. Remember, I have it at low speed. I'm going to dial this up to 6. Okay, now I'm just moving across the surface at the appropriate speed. Turn it off. Once I'm done using it, I place it in the center of the bench. I can go ahead and take the cord off my shoulder, or from around my shoulder, and I can wind my cord up. Now, if you noticed, when I went down the material, I sanded it right along from the edge, down. Now, let me explain this. The width of the piece was about like this, right? So I'm going to go like this, down. Now, when I was coming around the back side, I'm overlaying half over that, so then I'd be going down this way. And then I'd be going over half again. That's how you want to make sure you go over this. That's what you want. And you'll notice that it's kind of my catchphrase. That's what you want, all right? You want product to look like a craftsperson that cares about what they're doing and taking care of their equipment, the material, and the end product of whatever they're producing, okay? So, this is the random orbit sanders, and that's how those work. Now, the next two sanders I want to talk about are the finish sanders. Some people call these a jig bug. Some people call them vibrating sanders. One way or the other, they're a finish sander that was designed for 150 and 180 grit typically, okay? The last grit in the wood shop that we use is 220 grit, because the finish that we have, after you sand the surface with 220 grit by hand, that way it won't leave a milling mark from a machine, the finish will fill in the grain or the scratch surface where no one sees it. So that's as far as we have to go. Now, here's a quarter sheet vibrating sander. or finish sander, I take a piece of sandpaper that's cut to the right appropriate size. I take my flathead screwdriver, I take this and I just bring this over just to get this to register inside here, and then I loosen it up. I flip this over, I wrap this around this way, and then I get this wrapped up just a little bit like this, so that way when I lever this portion back, it'll go inside of here. And then I'll flip it back over to make it tight. And loosen it up. Now this is nice and tight in here. So that's how you put the paper on the quarter sheet. I flip this over. Oh, I'll take this piece off. I'll take this sheet. Instead of using a screwdriver to lever it, I can use my fingers on this plate here. I flip this over, push down on this plate, remove the old, grab a fresh piece of 180 grit. Okay, well this is under nice and tight. And here's that sander. Now these two sanders, like I said, they're finish sanders, so it's getting you a little bit closer to the end result. This machine here, or sander, you would hold it like this, sanding along the grain again as you turn it on. Now you let this sit on the surface, you turn this on, and you move it across the surface at 8 feet per minute, as well as the other machines, okay? Now, this one happens to be quarter sheet, this one happens to be a half sheet. Now, this one happens to have the same type of trigger as a belt sander. You pull the trigger, push the pin in, and this will leave it in the on position. When you want to release that, or you just pull the trigger, it'll release it, it'll turn it off, okay? Now, with this, both of these machines are gonna leave you a surface that has a scratch pattern on it that's different than the random warp sander. What these two machines are going to do is it's going to leave you a Z pattern. Now this is going to be extremely exaggerated, but it'll be like this along the surface. Now remember, your grain is running up and down this way, right? This is all the growth rings you can see here as far as the growth of the tree. This is a face of a board. This is along the grain, okay? Always saying along the grain. So this is the Z pattern that the finish sander is going to create. Okay, like I said, this is exaggerated. It's smaller than that, but I want you to see this so that way I don't want you to find out when you take it to the spray booth and put a glossy finish on it, and then you see it and it looks really, really bad. We want to make sure that you end up with a really nice product at that. So with these two finish sanders, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use the half sheet. Okay. I'm going to take this, I'm going to place this in here. I plug this in. I know that it's not on because I just tested it. I place this over my shoulder. I grab my sander itself. Both hands are on it. And then I'll clamp this side down. This machine is not real aggressive. I don't have to worry about it moving it a whole bunch, but you should have it clamped. I go ahead, I have both hands on this.